So Bill Maher went after the outrage over Halloween costumes on his HBO show last week. This is normally where I would show you a clip of that, but there's been a giant uptick on YouTube of copyright trolling recently. So instead, I'll have to read you a chunk of what he said. So listen to this. He said, Now I personally don't care if you go trick-or-treating dressed as 0.01% of Elizabeth Warren, but the Office of Scolding Justice Warriors has decreed no hula girls, no Indian chiefs, no Southern belles, no Daniel Boone, no geishas, ninjas, gypsies, mobsters, terrorists, no Cleopatra, pirates offend one-eyed people. You can't dress as a hobo because it makes light of the homeless. You can't dress as Quasimodo because it offends hunchbacks. You can't dress as an escaped mental patient because it offends Kanye. Not everything that merely alludes to another culture is racist or cultural appropriation. Halloween was always fun because it wasn't PC. Not being PC was almost the whole point of the holiday. But now everything has to be turned into a federal case of snowflakes versus humor. So then he goes on to list a bunch of stats, including how 80% of Americans in a recent poll believe that political correctness is a problem. And even an overwhelming majority of minority groups agree that political correctness is a problem. And he says, quote, the majority of America is with the Democrats on the issues. They just find the woke people irritating as hell. Nobody likes you, including the so-called marginalized groups whose feelings you decide need protecting. When did liberals become the fun police? Does anybody remember when conservatives were the ones with sticks up their asses? We went from yes, we can to oh, no, you didn't. Okay, so that's just, I just gave you like a little chunk of what he said. You should probably go watch the entire New Rules segment. It is available on YouTube, but again, just for copyright reasons, I'm being cautious here and not showing it. But there's a lot to digest here and a lot to break down. Broadly speaking, I totally agree in certain parts, and in other parts I disagree, or it's not, like, complete. It's slightly misleading the way he's framing it. So, first let me get to the areas where I agree. On the general sense that, okay, people on the left are sometimes oversensitive. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And I've seen this backlash now that I definitely disagree with, where some people are saying, well, no, political correctness is just not being a dick. Like, that's what political correctness is about. Like, hey, let's not be assholes, and specifically, let's not be assholes to marginalized groups that historically white people have fucked over forever. And I just think that that's a wrong conception of political correctness. I don't think when people mention political correctness, they're talking about just don't be a dick. I think that when people talk about political correctness, they're clearly talking about, in most cases, the overstepping, where it's like, no, now you've swung the pendulum too far in the other direction, and it's not just about not being a dick. You're saying, hey, don't tell jokes that might actually be funny because I'm offended by it, and I'm not okay with them. It's the overreaching of people who would otherwise believe in the core of what I just laid out. Don't be a dick. It's people who, in service of trying to stop people from being dicks, they overreach and become dicks in their own respect. We've said the word dick a lot in this segment. But I think that I don't agree with the notion that, like, oh, all the right-wing bitching about political correctness is just like people who want to be able to be dicks and have no repercussions. No, sometimes when people talk about political correctness, there are genuine, legitimate cases of the backlash, and oftentimes authoritarian in nature backlash from the left is overreaching, and it's not reasonable, and it's not rational according to the overwhelming majority of Americans. And I think the poll that Maher cites kind of backs that up. So, yeah, are there costumes where it's like, oh my God, you're being so insensitive and you need to stop, but in reality it's like, no, perhaps you're being oversensitive. It's not that the person wearing the costume is being a dick, it's that you're you're being a dick for calling them out for wearing it. And some of the ones he listed, I would fit in that category. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean that, like, you know, hey, there's no instances where something goes too far. In fact, I just saw an article the other day. There was a guy wore a Nazi outfit to some Halloween party, and he literally dressed his son up, his, like, toddler son, as Hitler with a little Hitler mustache. Now, I'm not one to ever get outraged about stuff like, you know, whatever, comedians saying something that's offensive or Halloween costumes. But that was an instance where I was like, even too far for me, dog. Like, don't dress up as a Nazi. It's probably a terrible idea. There was another one I remember covering years back. It was the Halloween after Trayvon Martin was killed, and these two people went dressed up. One of them was dressed as Trayvon Martin with literally red, like paint on his chest or something to indicate being shot and murdered. And he was holding Skittles and Arizona iced tea, and he had on blackface. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? See, that's an instance where I think the backlash is legitimate. It's not like, oh, you're being oversensitive. It's like, no, seriously, that's a super fucked up thing to do, what the guy's doing. So I think there's a balance in the conversation, but I would say that we should lean more heavily on the side of care about people's intentions in this realm and let most of the stuff go. Now, that's my personal flavor. I know many people could disagree with me on that, but I'm just letting you guys know where I fall on that spectrum. I fall on the side of the spectrum of let as much go as humanly possible, care more about what people's intention was and when they put on the costume. If people didn't know, maybe don't get as mad at them. But yes, there are certain things that can cross the line. But another aspect to the conversation is there's this new framing of the discussion. And actually, I shouldn't even say it's new because it's probably always been the framing of the conversation that, like, oh, it's the right-wing people who are politically incorrect, and it's the left-wing people who are politically correct. And it's like all the edgy outsider stuff is on the right. And that's the part of this I totally disagree with. Because political correctness is only brought up in the context of going after people on the left. But it's like, no, I could give you a perfect example of political correctness on the right, and it wasn't even called political correctness. All the snowflakes who were screaming about Colin Kaepernick kneeling. And we're saying, stand for my song, my national song, man. No, okay, see, you're being politically correct. Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem is politically incorrect. And it is edgy, and he's doing it to make a point, an important point about police brutality, how he wants that problem to be addressed through policy. So, and again, nobody framed it like that, except me. But I'm here, that's why I'm here. I'm doing my job. The reality is, there are snowflakes and there are politically correct people all over the place. Another example of right-wing political correctness, anytime I bring up, or, you know, other people on the left bring up, literal polling data that says when you ask people all over the world which country is the biggest threat to world peace, the U.S. always ranks number one. We are always the biggest threat to world peace, according to people all around the world. Not Russia, not Iran, not Pakistan or India, not North Korea. The United States, number one threat to world peace as a country. So when I bring that up, you will oftentimes hear people, call me anti-American or something. And they're really triggered by that fact. Okay, well, that is nothing but right-wing political correctness. Because I'm bringing up a fact, they're triggered in response to it, and they get all emotional, and they say things that are irrational like, oh, you're anti-America. No, I'm not anti-America. I'm pro-America. That's why I'm trying to help fix America's problems. I don't want us to be number one on that list of countries that are a threat to world peace. I want to fix that. I want to stop our offensive wars, our regime change wars. I want to change the perception of people around the world. So I'm trying to fix the problem, so I'm pro-America. But the triggered snowflake, politically correct bitches on the right will say, how dare you talk about the United States in that way? You're anti-America. No. You're just a triggered snowflake and you're being politically correct. I'm being politically incorrect and telling you the truth. So again, important point, man. Donald Trump, when he sued Bill Maher over a joke he made, Donald Trump was being politically correct and was being a snowflake bitch. He was triggered. The list goes on and on. Every time Donald Trump says, and a lot of people on the right have this position, we need to ban flag burning. Why are you being politically correct? Why are you being politically correct? the freedom to burn a flag is an important freedom to have in what's supposed to be a free country. To know that you can burn the flag and not get locked up for it means you value living in a country that's as free as ours is. So to be triggered by flag burning, again, you're being politically correct. So in other words, my point is, even though I would say there is a hefty amount of political correctness on the left, where people perhaps are oversensitive about stuff like Halloween costumes or comedians' jokes and stuff like that, there's also political correctness on the right. But the conversation is always had in the context of, all the politically correct snowflakes are on the left, and that's just not true. And then the final point I'll make is this. The right uses political correctness oftentimes as a cover to say things that are just factually not true. And we need to be clear about the lines in this conversation. So again, I already conceded, and I do believe this, there are instances of the left being politically correct and getting triggered by a costume that they shouldn't be triggered by, okay? But I've seen it myself, people saying, immigrants, commit the most crimes. Then when you go, wait, what? No, that's not right. They go, why are you being politically correct? And no, it's not that I'm being politically correct. I'm being factually correct. Every study on this issue has come back with the same answer. Native citizens commit more crimes per capita than undocumented immigrants and documented immigrants. So this notion of like, oh my God, the immigrants are like criminal hordes, that's bullshit. That's utter bullshit. And when I point out that that's bullshit and your response is you're just being politically correct, no, I'm being factually correct. So what you'll see is, and this is usually when they have nowhere else to go because they can't back up their argument, they'll portray their ideas, which are just wrong, which are just incorrect, as like, I'm just being politically incorrect. No, you're not being politically incorrect, you're just incorrect. So that's another important point, because that's one of the last tricks on the right, where they say something outrageous in the sense that it's wrong and also usually offensive. But then they say, the only reason you won't acknowledge it is because you're being politically correct. And that's just not true. That's just not true. So we need to... I feel like this is an important discussion to have about political correctness, because the two, I think, strongest arguments that land against the left when they're made by the right, arguments about, oh my God, you're being politically correct, bitches, I think those arguments mostly land. And if you want to deny that, then that's your problem. You need to grapple with that reality. And also arguments about, you care about identity politics too much. Those are the two arguments against the left that I think stick more than any other arguments. So that's why I feel like it's important that people on the left, like myself and like most of the people listening right now, we need to grapple with that reality and have a good understanding of the situation and have our responses ready, because too often I feel like people on the left kind of play into that trap, and that does help, I think, recruit some more people for the right. When their perception of the left is, you're all snowflakes, you're all politically correct, you're all too obsessed with identity politics and not obsessed enough with the actual issues, we have to have responses. And, my responses are, no, I actually do care about the issues completely. That's all I really care about. I actually don't believe in identity politics. And on political correctness, sure, sometimes the left goes too far, and I'm against that. Let's also talk about the right-wing politically correct people, and let's also talk about the fact that oftentimes political correctness is used as a dodge on the right, where they try to get away with saying things that are not politically incorrect, but factually incorrect. So it's an interesting conversation, and I hope that my weird, nuanced take on this lands. I do know that there are many out there who disagree with me on different sides of this. There are people on the right who will think everything I'm saying is bullshit. And I know there are people on the left who will go, no, you're wrong. Seriously, political correctness is only not being a dick. So anyway, that's my take on it. You do with it what you will.